If you've never experienced a 360 video before, you're in for a surprise. Now we're going to be taking a look at the 2022 Ford Edge, and this is going to be a fully immersive 360 video experience. If you've never used 360 before, what you're going to do, if you're on your desktop, you can take your mouse, you can click and scroll around to look at everything that's around us. If you're on your cell phone, make sure you've got the YouTube app, and what you can do is literally do a full 360 pan and view, go up and down, literally rotate your phone 180 degrees, 360 degrees technically, in order to see exactly what's going on. Going to be taking a look at some exterior styling, what's going on underneath the hood, first, second row spacing, and everything in between. This is going to be a pretty crazy experience. Let's go for it. We've got the SE, the SEL, the ST line, the titanium, and then the ST. So a series of different options that are available just depending on what you personally need out of your vehicle. Now, one crazy thing about the Edge that was updated in the 22 model is that you can no longer get front-wheel drive. This thing is only available as an all-wheel drive option across the entire vehicle lineup. And that doesn't matter if you're in Canada or the States, you're strictly looking all-wheel drive inside of this thing. Not necessarily a bad thing, like all-wheel drive performs infinitely better in comparison to that front-wheel drive. You're gonna have a slightly lower fuel economy though, but not a crazy one at the same time. Now looking, we do have our bi-LED headlamps there, so for our daytime, nighttime running lamps. We've got our fog lamps a little bit further down. Now, if we take a look at some of the moldings, so if you drop yourself down a little bit, we've got our front bumper there, and even the body moldings right across the actual edge of the titanium body, they are going to be a black painted instead. Now, we do have the option in some of the other trims for a full body color. So if you prefer that body color over those black highlights, you've got that option. But overall, nice look. As we take a peek at the wheels, we've got an option for either 18s, 19s, 20s, or 21s, just depending on the trim level that you're in. This is the titanium, which means that we are looking at 20-inch tires, but we do have the option for different things, like when we get into the Edge ST, 20-inch tire standard with a different style rim, with the optional upgrade to a 21 instead. So a series of different looks and different styles that are available just based off of what you need. Now, one of the cool things, even about the rims, is that if you wanted something different, you could always do something aftermarket, or you could simply hydro dip these things instead if you wanted to give yourself a much more unique look. Now, as we look at the front end of the vehicle, series of different grille choices that are available on top of that. So we do have a beautiful metallic grille, and because this is the titanium, we've got some small highlights that are going to be an aluminum instead. So aluminum versus body color, titanium specifically for that aluminum. Now, underneath the hood of the vehicle, in order to get inside, just looking at the driver's side door, just next to the gas and brake. So left-hand side, there's a release, and then underneath, just above the Ford logo, we lift that up, and we've got the physical release. Up it goes on hydraulics, which is definitely a nice thing. Now, taking a peek here, actually I'm gonna pull you a tiny little bit closer just to make things a little bit easier. There we go. All right, now take a peek, look down. This is the 2-liter turbocharged engine that's going to be standard inside of the majority of the Edge lineup. We've got either a 2-liter turbo or a 2.7-liter turbocharged engine. Now, the 2.7-liter is strictly going to be for the Edge ST, so you're never going to get that in any other vehicle but the Edge ST specifically. But the engines themselves will look fairly similar, just obviously going to have a slightly beefier setup in that 2.7. As you can see there, we can easily top up our fluids if we need to, easily check our oil, and then we've also got easy access to the battery along the top right-hand side. But power-wise, inside of both vehicles, it's actually still pretty powerful. Like this base 2-liter engine, turbocharged engine, can push out 250 horsepower and 280 pound-feet of torque, so that is amazing. Now the Edge ST kicks that up a teeny bit of a notch. We go to 335 horsepower, an impressive 380 pound-feet of torque. So an insane amount of power difference looking at that Edge ST versus any of the other vehicle lineups for the Edge. The model lineup, I should say. So we do have quite a few different options available, but like I said, the power inside of this version of the vehicle is still really nice. Though, whether you go for the 2-liter or the 2.7-liter is going to depend on your own personal preferences. Like, are you the type of person where you want a little bit more fuel economy, or do you love the power? All of the raw power. Because if you like the power, you're going to want to go for that 2.7-liter engine instead. Versus if you're more of just the occasional driver, you want, better fuel economy and things like that, go for one of the regular 2-liter, which you're going to find, as I mentioned, in the majority of the vehicle lineup. Now the sweet spot, the titanium, don't get me wrong, is really nice, but it has leather seats on the inside, which we'll touch base on in just a second. But if you don't care about the seats, if you don't care about cloth versus leather, things like that, the SEL and the ST line are kind of that good ideal middle ground for the vehicle. So tons of different options that are available, but it's going to depend on you and what you like. We do have our forward-facing camera available as an option inside of some trim levels of the vehicle, which means that we've got a front 180-degree view. Now the Edge is not going to have a 360 camera whatsoever, it doesn't matter the trim, but you do have the option for that front-facing 180-degree camera. We've got our forward sensing system, reverse sensing system, optional park assist, so this thing can help out with parallel and perpendicular parking, just depending on how you have the vehicle set up. But overall, this thing, styling-wise, is fairly nice. Let's take a quick peek and see what's going on with that driver's side. So, let's go for a little bit of a walk. Up we go, up we go, up we go, and in we go. All right, so taking a look on the outside there, we can just kind of see this highlight, but we do have a series of different buttons on the outside of the door. The bottom two, we can actually use that to lock the door, and then if your Edge is equipped with intelligent access, as long as we've got the key fob on us, which we'll touch on the key fob for a second there. We've got our unlock button, lock button, trunk release, unlock button, lock button, remote start, trunk release, horn or panic alarm button, and then we've also got our emergency access key. Oh, this is kind of challenging with this thing in 360. I have to do this perfectly. This is ridiculous. Usually you can cut in between different views, but here nor there. So as long as your key fob is on you, what you can do on the outside there, you can literally intelligent access in order to be able to lock and unlock. So locking, we can press the bottom two buttons, or we can press the button on the outside there, and then we can also just slide our hand in order to unlock the door instead. But taking a peek at the door itself, really, really nice and a great setup on the inside here. We do have this beautiful leather right across the top and the bottom of the door. We've got this micro white stitching which stretches across part of the dash there on top of that, and even different parts of the highlights of the seats and things like that. When we get into the Edge ST, it's going to be a micro red stitching, and it looks really, really nice. Now along the top of the door, we've got our Bang & Olufsen badge, because the titanium does have an upgraded Bang & Olufsen sound system inside of it. We do have a series of different seat memory buttons that are available on top of that, and that's going to be for our driver's seat as well as for our side view mirrors. So we can literally set this up however we'd like to, press and hold either 1, 2, or 3 to save your own personal profile. Now that's not standard across the entire vehicle lineup. It is available optionally in some trims of the vehicle. We've got our basic control in order to be able to adjust the side view mirrors and things like that. A few cup holders there along both the driver-passenger door, and then looking just to the left-hand side of the steering wheel, we've got a series of different buttons so we can turn our fog lamps on or off. We've got a selector switch to figure out what's going on with our running lamps. We've got our instrument cluster dimmer switch and a few other things. Now, we do have options for the actual liftgate itself. It's at least going to be a manual liftgate inside of the SE and the SEL, optional power in the SEL with the convenience package, and then inside of the titanium and the Edge ST, we do have a foot activated power liftgate. So that is available optionally inside of some of the other trims, which means that we don't literally need to have our fob, well, we need to have the fob on us, but we don't need to unlock using the fob. We can literally just swipe our foot underneath in order to get that liftgate to go up and down as necessary. First row of the Edge is fairly nice. Now, there are many changes from the 21 to the 22 model, but the seats themselves, very similar to what we saw in the 21s, still very comfortable. We've got a series of different options for the seats themselves. So it's either going to be a cloth seat, an ActiveX seating material, so a faux leather, or we've got a full leather seat instead. Depending on the trim, we are in the titanium, so this thing does have a leather seat. When we get inside of the 301A package of the Edge, or we look at the 401 version of the Edge ST, we will have those micro inserts, which means we'd have heated and ventilated first row seats, and that would also give us second row seats, so outboard heated row second seats, which is amazing. Now, a few things to point out just along the driver's door. We do have this beautiful metallic highlight, and that's the same for the driver-passenger side. And then as we look through some of the differences, like we look through and we can see that beautiful metallic highlight there follows through into all of the vents. And even if you look down, it moves through and it actually takes it all the way through that center stack there. So really, really nice look, and it will be different, especially when we get to that Edge ST. So it's got more of an aggressive, meaner look. Like we look down a little bit at these highlights in the armrest, that micro white stitching would be a micro red stitching instead, and it just makes it pop a little bit more. But one of the nice things is that we do have push button start across the vehicle lineup. On it goes, and we'll get to the Sync 4 media screen and things like that, but this is just going to be a quick walk around showing you some of the basics of the vehicle. If you're looking for more of an in-depth walk around at how that steering wheel and cluster works, or how you can take advantage of the Sync 4 media screen, check down below because I've put together crazy comprehensive videos on how both of these things work, and you can figure out how to use Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, so setting these things up through our media screen there on top of that. But going through some of the basics, we've got a few different options for the actual cluster screen itself. For the majority of the lineup, it's going to be a dual setup. So we've got two individual screens on the left and the right hand side, and those are controlled using the buttons on the steering wheel. So we've got two individual pads there. Pretty straightforward. Pad on the left controls the left screen, pad on the right controls the right screen. Realistically, the pad on the right is probably where you're going to spend the majority of your time. We've got our trip 1, 2 counters, fuel economy, and a number of different driver assistance settings. And there are some pretty cool settings inside of this thing. So we've got our blind spot system, so our blind spot's going to highlight orange if anybody's entered the blind spot on either side of the vehicle. We've got our cross traffic alert, so if we go to back up, the vehicle's going to let us know if somebody's come perpendicular to us. And we've got a few different options for our cruise control, so normal versus adaptive. Now, the reason why we've got adaptive cruise is because this one's got the Ford Copilot 360 Assist Plus package. Quite the mouthful, but it gives us factory navigation that's also got connected services, so things like live traffic and weather, things like that, but it gives us the adaptive cruise, so the buttons on the left-hand side. As a default, we're at least going to have regular cruise, but we've got the we've got the option for the adaptive cruise. So we can easily toggle that cruise control system on or off. We've got a distance indicator, so how close or how far are we away from the vehicle in front of us. But more importantly, we've got a lane centering system. So we've got a base lane keeping system that we can toggle on or off by pressing the button on the very tip of that left stick, easily toggle it on and off. It's the lane centering system that's essentially that lane keeping system on steroids. And the reason why is because the lane keeping will gently nudge us back into our lane, whereas lane centering will literally keep us centered in our lane as we go. It's not fully self-driving, but it is pretty close. You will get a message letting you know you have to keep your hands on the steering wheel if they're off for too long. But if you lose focus because kids are screaming behind you, you get distracted for a second, whatever the case may be, the vehicle does have your back. There are a number of different safety things, such as pre-collision assist. So if the vehicle senses a potential collision, automatically slams on the brakes for us. You can turn that system off as well. I know some people just aren't a fan of that whatsoever, but you can turn that system off. We look at the pad on the right-hand side, and that's going to be for things like changing songs and radio stations. We can answer or hang up on a phone call, adjust our volume. And speaking of volume, stop this pain, so don't waste your time on me. You're already a voice inside my head. Oh, that brings back memories of high school. Oh, amazing, amazing. But that is an incredible sound, and that's because we are in the titanium version of the vehicle, which has a 12-speaker Bang & Olufsen sound system. So this thing sounds absolutely amazing. I do love the fact that we've got that as an option there. If you don't really care about the sound, like the base 6-speaker system still is pretty good. You just have much deeper bass and a much better sound inside of the Bang & Olufsen instead. But we can control our volume there, as you saw. We can control our volume just off to the left-hand side, just underneath the media screen. And then we can also mute out. There is one more button on the steering wheel, and that's going to be for our voice command prompt. So voice command prompt is great. With the new Sync 4 media screen that Ford introduced last year, the vehicle itself can listen to wake words, so very similar to what we'd find in our phones. So whether we look at like Siri or Google, we could also say something like OK Ford, and that would wake up the voice command prompt. So we could change songs, radio stations, we could navigate using our voice. If we were hooked up through Android Auto or Apple CarPlay, we could also press that button in order to be able to use either our Google or Siri assistant on top of that, which is great. But we do have a steering wheel that is going to be telescopic, so we can easily pull it in and out, up and down, etc. The seats themselves, they might be a power or a manual adjust, just depending on which version of the vehicle you've got. And that's the same thing with a few other things, like we've got LED fog lamps, we've got a selector switch to figure out just by our left knee what's going on with our running lamps. I honestly always just recommend keeping it in the auto setting. We can figure out what's going on with the brightness of that cluster screen so we can adjust the brightness easily. If your vehicle is equipped with a power liftgate, we'll have a button there on top of that where we can easily open and close it up. And then we've got our traction control button there. Now we are push button start inside of the vehicle lineup across the entire lineup. And we've got a series of different options for the media screen. So if you kind of flip around and look at the screen, this thing looks amazing. And it sounds amazing as you heard earlier, but it's just got some great feature sets. So along the very top left-hand side, we've got some options for the sound, which this thing looks so nice. We've got some bass for a radio, so we've got AM, FM, Sirius XM, and a number of other things. Series of different options for the display for clock connectivity. The vehicle itself is equipped with an onboard modem, so you can use it as a wireless hotspot for up to 10 devices, but you do need to have a data-only plan through your cell phone provider in order to be able to get that. We've got our Ford Assistant, as I mentioned earlier, and then a series of different options for our ambient light, so we can adjust the brightness as necessary. We can easily reset that out if we wanted to. The map itself is actually fairly responsive. It is nice pinch to zoom. It's a huge improvement over Ford's last system, that Sync 3 system. I just find this one doesn't have as much, it's not bugginess, but there's a little bit of choppiness. That's the best way for me to describe it. So, but this Sync 4 media screen, it looks like it's addressed that issue. But one of the cool things is that even if we didn't want to rely on factory navigation, if you were hooked up through Android Auto or Apple CarPlay, you could use Google Maps, Apple Maps, or Waze directly through this screen. Now, one of the cool things, you can see blocks along the screen. So if we go to this very top menu there, we've got this 6-button setup. That brings us down to a few other options. So we've got our 2048, we've got blocks, sketch, tiles, and a number of things. So we've got a few games that we can play directly through this screen. It's like they're kind of looking at Tesla saying, we should probably get some games for the passenger, for the driver, to keep them occupied when we're stopped. Stop for the driver, or if the passenger wants to stay occupied. We've got some options for different things. So we see we've got lanes. It's going to show up there in a second. So we've got a few different options that are available for games and things like that. We've got our sketch pad. So if you wanted to take some notes, look at this. So we've got different options for sketching, and it's literally just a finger sketch if we wanted to. We can kind of change up colors. We can make notes and a number of other things. Hello. So good. We can also stretch it across so it kind of blocks off. It actually, taking a look, it just makes these things, this selector tray, just a little bit smaller. One of the cool things about the selector tray, we just press any of these options and it's going to launch us into whatever option that we've set up there. So as you can see, we've got devices. We can set up a number of different devices. We can set up individual user profiles and things like that. Now moving down, Ford introduced, as I mentioned, that Sync 4 screen in the 2021, and they moved the climate settings. So they used to be buttons, but they've actually moved it inside of the media screen instead. And it does look very, very nice. It's super responsive. Now, there have been some people that have said, what happens if the screen dies? You've got your factory warranty. You could also extend the warranty out on top of that if you were concerned about something potentially happening. But this thing does look very nice. It's super responsive. Like, look at the layout of this thing. It's absolutely gorgeous. And this is just for the base systems, like looking at what's going on with the actual fan control. Like, I think they did a great job of the responsiveness, but also the look of this system. It's pretty nice. Now moving down, we do have our volume rocker, our tuning rocker, which we can tune that way, or we can just press the voice command prompt on the steering wheel in order to change stations that way instead. Now this specific one just has the backup camera. We do have the option for the front-facing camera, but it's not a full 360. I wish that they would do that, but unfortunately not. So it's just the front camera. We don't have our side-mounted cameras as an option inside of this whatsoever. But we can at least have a front view, so a front and a rear view, as you saw there. So we can press that button to get into the rear camera, or we can just throw ourselves into reverse to look at that instead. But we do have a few options when we get into that 301 version of the Titanium or the 401 inside of the ST. We would have that front 180-degree camera. And what that does is just gives us a better view in order to see what's going on in front of us. Moving down, we can change between songs or radio stations. We do have a wireless charge pad inside of this thing, as well as 2 USB ports. So we've got a USB as well as a USB-C. But we don't really need that unless we're charging up a phone that doesn't support wireless charging, because in the Titanium, we do have our wireless charge pad. And that also is available, the wireless charging, inside of some of the other trims of the vehicle. Might be packaged, might be included, just depending on which version of the vehicle you're in. Now moving down from that, we do have our selector switch, so we can change between our park, reverse, neutral, drive, or that sport mode, which hangs onto the gears a little bit longer, giving us a more sportier performance. Down a bit more, we do have our electronic parking brake, and then our auto start stop, which you can toggle that start stop system off if you want to, and we've got our parking sensors. On top of that, we do have a few different options for storing our phone, so I think that's cool. So we've got our main storage there. As I mentioned, if our phone supports wireless charging, available as an option on top of that. There's a little storage tray just underneath the cup holders, and then our armrest. So we do have a fully removable tray, and then in the armrest itself, there's no extra USB ports and things like that. It literally is just going to be the tray itself with a ton of storage there. Now, as we start to move up overhead, we do have our auto-dimming rear view mirror, series of different cabin control lights, or cabin lights, controls for our cabin lights. There we go. That's what I was looking for. And then we also do have our shade that we can easily open or close there on top of that. So if you kind of pan yourself up overhead, you can see that sunroof open and closing. I should say the shade anyway. So shade, it's literally just a single button press. You can pause it part way, you can open it back up. If you wanted to, using the buttons up overhead, we could also just vent this thing up. So you're gonna see that in a second, opening it up fully. And there you go, so we can create a vent, we can close that vent up, and we can open this panoramic roof up on top of that. So single button press opens this thing up the majority of the way. Look at that. So nice. But another button press will open it up the rest of the way. So it's not gonna be a full open, but it still opens it up quite a little bit. So if you wanted to open this thing up just to kind of create cross breeze, whatever the case may be, you can easily do that. Typical Ford styling, we do also have, so you can see there, our sunglasses holder. We've got our home link system as well. So if you had a garage door opener at home, you can easily program that in. We've got our visor, vanity mirror with our lights built in. And then this guy, we can actually take it and we can extend it. It doesn't block everything, but it blocks the majority of the sun that might be hitting our face. We do have our assist handles, and that's the same for the driver passenger side in the first and the second row. But overall features and styling wise, this thing looks really nice. As I mentioned, we've got a few different options when it comes down to a few things. So we've got some options for the interior, different color choices and things like that. Now, if we look just above that Sync 4 media screen, we do have a little storage tray there, and we can actually fully remove this thing. So it's just a removable rubber tray. And because we're in the upgraded Bang & Olufsen system, we do also have a speaker right along the very top there. But that's gonna be the basics looking at the interior for the first row. Let's hop to the back and see what's going on. Now moving into the second row of the vehicle, this thing is fairly comfortable. Like the seats have a nice amount of spring to them, which is always a good thing. Super comfortable for those distance drives. Now we don't have the flexibility of being able to move these seats forwards and backwards at all. They are locked into place. But one of the cool things is that we do have a little lever along the left side. We could take that in order to be able to fold the seat back a little bit so we can recline it a bit, which is definitely a nice thing. And like a huge difference, because when we've got the seat back, like I've got like 5, almost 6 inches of headspace up overhead, compared to if the seat's just upright, still a nice amount of space, not nearly as much though. Like back here, I do have, so up overhead, about a little under 2 inches, so like 2 roughly inches of space up overhead. And that's the reason why, because this one does have the panoramic roof. So if you kind of scroll up and look overhead, beautiful look, and it is panoramic, so it goes across the driver passenger side, and the shade itself will actually open up the full way. I've just got it partially closed right now just for sun glare and all that fun stuff. But we do have our handles along the driver passenger side, as well as a little hook, and we've got some base cabin control lightings overhead there. Now, overall styling inside of this thing is great. This is the ebony interior for the vehicle, so we've got our nice black contrast with our cream color along the very top of the vehicle. But very similar to what we saw in the front end of the vehicle. So that first row, I should say, we've got our silver highlights along the driver passenger door. We've got that beautiful white stitching across that leather bottom there also. And then we do have, when we get into the ST line and then the ST, we will have micro red stitching instead, which looks really, really sharp. Behind the driver passenger side, we do also have a few pockets there. And really nice, because we look down behind the armrest and we do have a little storage tray. 2 USB ports. We've got a USB, USB-C, as well as a traditional 12 volt, or 150 watt, I should say. So it's a 110 volt outlet. So our traditional wall outlet, we could plug in a traditional wall plug if we wanted to, with some caveats. Like it's not like you're going to plug a mini fridge into the back of this thing, but if you needed to plug in something basic, like, ooh, I don't know, maybe a laptop, you could definitely do it from the back. Now the seats themselves are fairly comfortable. We do have a 60-40 split, so 60% on this side, 40% on the other side, and we can fold down one or the other if we needed to. And then we also do have some cup holders down there. So as you can see, so 2 cup holders. We do have some cup holders along the driver passenger door there on top of that. But overall, this thing is fairly nice and spacious. This one, because we've got the upgraded Bang & Olufsen sound system, we've got a series of different speakers literally all over the place just to give us more of a fully immersive sound. But overall, this is pretty nice. All right, so this is the trunk area of the 2022 Ford Edge. Now this is the titanium model, but it doesn't matter if you're in the titanium or if you're in the base SE trim level, the spacing inside of these things are going to be the exact same. So cargo dimensions for the loading area specifically are going to be showing up, and we do have a few different options that are available. Now, one of the cool things is that depending on the trim level that you're in, we also do have the flexibility of being able to power release these seats. So if you wanted to fold down one seat or the other, you've got the flexibility to do it. And that's just along our left-hand side. So moving down, we've got a 12-volt power point. And then we do also have a left versus a right release. So we can literally just press and hold and watch that. Down it goes. Look at the difference in the cargo dimensions, specifically the depth when we've got that second row folded down. So there is plenty of space in the back of this thing. And as I mentioned, we do have the flexibility of folding down one side or the other if we want to. And if you take a look just behind the back seat, so the second row seats in the back, we do also have our anchor and tether points. So we do have across both, well, all three seats technically, we've got all of our anchors there, and then just underneath the seat. So if you've got front or rear facing car seats, you're not gonna have an issue setting either of those up inside of this vehicle. But a few things to point out, if we look just off to the left or the right-hand side, we do have some spots in the back there because we could set up a privacy shade if we want to. That's available either from the factory, aftermarket as a dealer option, so you've got some options there. And then we do have some different speakers and things like that because we've got a few different options for the speaker setup, which we'll get down to in a moment. Because we're in the titanium, we do have a Bang & Olufsen 12-speaker setup. But moving down, we do have this tray that is completely removable. Out it goes. And taking a peek underneath. So we do have a boatload of storage space back there. We've got a left versus right storage side, and you can easily toss some things in there. We do have our white spigot that we're going to use if we ever need to use a jerry can to fill up this vehicle. On top of that, we do also have our mini spare tire, and that is a mini spare tire, but one little caveat. That's going to be standard in Canada versus it's an optional feature when we look at the States. So, I mean, you could get it at time of ordering from the factory, but it is nice to know that it's available there as an option. And then just easily pop this thing back in. Up it goes. And one other thing to point out, if we kind of move down a little bit, we do also have our cargo net hooks. So we've got two down below, and then we've got two up high by the sides there. So if we wanted to install some cargo nets and things like that, we've got the flexibility to easily be able to do it. And then we can just kind of make out along the left side a little storage space. Same thing just along that passenger side. So a little bit of storage space in the back there also. So we're gonna go back and forth on the highway for a minute just so you can get a little bit more of a feel of what this thing is like. It's nice, it's nimble, and like I said, the 2-liter turbo engine is still plenty powerful. You obviously won't have as much power as you will in the ST, but it still is really nice. But that's the question you have to ask yourself is, what amount of power are you looking for? What's your budget? And even looking at the basics, like the Edge does have the ST line. So even if you're not a big fan of the 2.7 liter engine, but you want something sportier, here we go. There it is. All right. But if you want something sportier, you can look for the ST line. And the ST line, don't get me, like, it's amazing. It is an amazing system. And the big reason why I love that system so much is that, that vehicle, that trim level, is because it's such a great trim level. Like, it gives you all of the look and the aggressiveness of the ST just without the 2.7 liter engine. Now, I do have the adaptive cruise control system going, and I do have smart cruise going. Well, smart cruise, I've got the lane centering system going. Oh, you jump between different manufacturers, but the lane centering system literally will keep you balanced in your lane. So it is amazing from that perspective. Now, the vehicle does need to recognize the lane markings in order for it to happen, but I mean, we take a look, my hands are hovering over the wheel right now, and it's keeping me perfectly balanced in the lane. And that's one of the cool things. Like, it's very different from the lane keeping system, where that keeping system will gently nudge you. The lane centering fully keeps you balanced in your lane. Yeah, message on the steering wheel, keep your hands on the wheel. Okay. So it is. It's nice that it's got that safety setting to let you know. So not fully self-driving yet, but that's coming soon. And we know that it's coming soon because if you look at the Mach-E, so the Ford electric Mustang, and then also the F-150, it came in the 21s, they've got the Blue Cruise feature. And that gives you fully hands-free driving. So you could literally hands off the wheel, the vehicle will literally drive for you on certain roads. Like, you can't just do it on residential streets and like regular city streets the same way you could in a Tesla, unfortunately, but you still do have the option of using that system if you really wanted to. Now, I don't know if it's released in Canada yet. I've got to double check that one, but if it's released, I'm just going to point a message down below letting you know if it's released in Canada or not. But that's on specific highways, like 400 series highways. So the road I'm on right now, so the 401, it would be standard there. You see, you've got it literally all over the place, but like, look at this. So it's keeping me perfectly balanced in the lane there. As we go, as you saw there was a little kind of turn off as we went. And I've got the lane keeping system going as well. And I've got the adaptive cruise. So in theory, like, it's slowing me down. Oh yeah, nice and slow, because the car in front of me, look at this. Car in front of me is slowing down like crazy. And then this thing should pick up to speed a little bit because that guy's gone out of the lane. But it's nice. I've got it in the furthest available distance, and it's kind of like crawling me towards the vehicle that's in front of me. So you've got some options like how close or how far you are away from the vehicle in front of you, and it is a very smart system. So I still have the speed set at 100 kilometers an hour right now, but the car in front of me is obviously like at a dead stop. So it's brought me down to a complete stop on top of that. This thing is nice. It's nimble. Gonna give it a teeny bit more gas. It's not past its break-in period, so I'm not gonna gun it. But one thing to note, if you do gun it and yours is a little bit of a newer vehicle, you're gonna get some burning smell going on. It's normal, that happens. Usually for the first few 100 kilometers, you might get a burning smell occasionally. It's not a bad thing. It's not like the vehicle's gonna be on fire or anything like that. I know some people kind of get freaked out at when you smell that. It's normal. It's just all of the excess liquids and oils and things like that just kind of burning away. That smell does end up going away. But vehicle keeping me perfectly balanced in between the lanes there. I am technically hands-free. I'm going to put a little bit of pressure on the steering wheel there, but my hands are literally hovering above the wheel. And like as we go through bends and things like that, you'll see like the vehicle is keep hands on wheel. All right. So you technically do have to keep your hands on the wheel because it's not Ford's Blue Cruise features, so it's not fully hands-free driving as of yet. 22, 23 maybe? Yeah, because it's not at the 22. 23 maybe, but I'm curious, is the Edge, so this thing is assembled in Oakville, Ontario, but that plant, Ford is actually in the process of electrifying it. So there have been rumblings that it might be assembled, the Edge might be assembled in Mexico, might be assembled overseas. Not really sure where that's going to happen as of yet, but as of today, where it stands, this thing is still assembled in Oakville. Nice Canadian-made vehicle. Canadian assembled vehicle, I should say. That's nice. Nice overall, as you can see there. So it is keeping me balanced in the lane using that lane centering system. And then the lane keeping system, if I didn't have the lane centering on, actually I'm going to turn it off for a second just to kind of show you. So I'm going to kind of veer over and hug a little bit of that right side. There we go. Lane keeping system on, and it's like, hey, what are you doing? Okay, there we go. So the lanes are green now, so if I start veering over, it should shake the steering. Yeah, it shakes the steering wheel. You've got the option for it to recenter you on top of that. So which way you end up going is going to be dependent on you. Like, if you've never used the adaptive cruise control feature before in any vehicle, it is really, really nice once you get the hang of it. Set it and forget it cruise control. I literally talk about it in all my videos, but it is really nice to use once you get the hang of it. Beautiful system. Beautiful system. All right, here we go. 1 and 2 and 3. It's good. It's good. It's good. All right, and here we, actually I'm just going to pull in right here, are. Well, and one of the cool things. So the selector switch for the gear shifter is great, but one of the nice things is that if you're in anything other than park, so you're in reverse, neutral, drive, sport mode, you just turn the vehicle off, automatically puts you into park. We do have a message that's coming up on the screen there as well, letting us know to check the back seats to make sure we haven't forgotten any occupants. So great safety setting. You can turn that thing off as well if you're not a fan of it. But that was a look at the 2022 Ford Edge Titanium. Now this was the Titanium specifically for this walk-around video, but what did you think? If you have any questions, drop down in the comment section below and let me know. More than willing to talk you through any problems that you might be having. But if you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up and share it with your social networks. And until I see you next time, take care.